Oh, kia ora koutou whānau. Welcome back to another edition of Big Hairy News. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're doing well. I can see in the chat that people have been going since about 9:45 talking about the monarchy and talking about what's going on with the monarchy. We obviously didn't talk about it on Friday night, which is when the news broke of the passing of Queen Elizabeth. But tonight on the show, well, you know how we roll here. Yo, sometimes we go a bit long. One of my radio bosses used to basically say to me, "You're the only person I know who uses 20 words when 10 would suffice." So so yeah, I can be a bit long-winded. I get that. But I do have a conversation which I've already had with the director, I think it is, the dude in charge of Monarchy New Zealand, Dr. Sean Palmer, talking a bit about that, which will probably play towards the end of the hour should we have time. Now, the reason I say should we have time is obviously some fairly massive news within New Zealand today, and that news is the COVID system. So I've got on board Michael Plank from the University of Canterbury, Professor Michael Plank, who we've had on numerous times. Look, I'm not even sent it. I'm not even quite ready for the show yet. Here we go. Me and my co-host over there, who's bloody sleeping, lazy bitch. Now, I don't use that as a misogynistic term. The dog is female. It's the technical and accurate term. I have already spoken to Michael. We talked at about 20 to 5, so straight after the announcement was made. So I'm going to play that for you in just a second, looking at the new traffic light system. Well, sorry, the no traffic light system. And then at about 10:15, Dr. Anna Brooks is joining us live. So if you've got a question for Dr. Anna, ask Dr. Anna. You know, we've done this before about the system right now. I would like to give you a chance to put it into the chat and go for it. Now, here's the thing that I want to ask. If you've been watching this for a while, you will know that I like to try and get advice from the people at the pointy end of the situation, right? Who are in the laboratories doing the work, which is why we love talking to Anna and others as well. So what I'm going to be asking these people is your behavior tomorrow when it comes to masks going to be different from what it was today? In other words, going to a supermarket today, you had to wear a mask. Well, you know, other than dicks who go, I'm not fucking wearing a mask. But the rules are you're supposed to wear a mask in the supermarket today. I want to ask you this question as well if you're watching, and you can mention it in the chats. If you go to the supermarket tomorrow, will you be wearing a mask? So, in other words, has the announcement today caused you to change your behavior tomorrow? Right. So tell me about that in the chat because I'm going to get to that. I've actually sent a text message with Susie Wiles today. I've got her response. I have a text message with Dr. David Welch today. I've got his response. I asked that question to Michael Plank, he responds, and I will ask that question when we have Anna live to Dr. Anna Brooks as well. So those four people, the only person who didn't have time to come back to me today, because why would they have it, is Michael Baker. I fired one off to Michael Baker as well. So all of these experts who we've been having on for sort of this whole time we've been doing this, I wanted to know from them, because of the announcement today, would their behaviors change? In other words, the government is using words like safe. The Prime Minister literally said, it's safe now to do this. She didn't say safer. She said safe. She also said there'll be no cancellation. There'll be a summer that's, no cancellations of events. We can plan things finally. To me, that kind of read as this is it. We're now, no matter what happens from here on in, it seems unlikely that we'll go backwards, right? So with that knowledge from the 9th floor, does that mean that you change how you're going to act when it comes to masks, etc.? Right. So let me know what you think. I'll tell you what I'm thinking at the end of this first part of the segment, but I'm also asking these four experts what they think about that. I've got two of them via text and I'll share them at the end. As I said, Michael Plank has answered that question and I'll ask that question unless I forget, because I am very forgetful of Anna Brooks when she comes on live as well. Now, some of you may be tuning in to find out the flow on from what happened on Friday night. If you weren't with us on Friday night, you won't know what we're talking about, but some of you may be wanting to know that. Let me tell you this. That story has not been put to bed yet. There are still ongoing conversations with me and some other people, but I will do it in my own time, whatever it is that I'm going to do. If you don't know what I'm talking about now, this will make no sense to you. For those that do, they will. I am neither going to be shut down by people telling me not to do something, but neither am I going to be bullied by people telling me I must do something. By the end of the week, most likely, I will have made the decision what I'm going to do with what was supposed to air on Friday night. Nobody else. But I can tell you it is going to change how I operate in this show. One of the things that is going to change is from now on, if I have a long form interview, like a 2-hour interview, which I think I've done 3 or 4 times on this show, the likely scenario, and I'm saying the likely scenario because the definition, it's not definite yet. The likely scenario is the only place you will see it is on my Patreon. What I'll probably end up doing, and just so you know, for those of you who don't watch independent media overseas, the likely scenario is the only place you'll see a full interview of length. I'm not talking about these interviews like with our experts for 20 minutes, but long form interviews is on my Patreon. Within the show, probably what I'll do with long form conversations is have clips. Okay. So I last week launched this Patreon, and it's very, very small, but we're very, very grateful. We've had about 11 people. Yeah, 11 people sign up. Fantastic. Love your bits. Thank you for helping us do what we're doing. Come and join the team, as it says down the bottom, and help us keep making independent news. I have decided that I'm going to start making content more specifically for patrons. So if you would like to get involved, you are welcome to go and have a look at that tonight. I'm not going to go through the membership levels, but there's 6 of them in there. You can look at them for yourself. You can be an executive producer all the way to a coffee runner, right? That's going to be up to you. Big Hairy News on Patreon, patreon.com/Big Hairy News. So this is a change that I am going to make. I'm going to start putting stuff on there because, to be honest with you, what we're doing is a daily news show, 10, 15-minute clips. Yeah. What that is going to be is a place to have 2 to 3 hour conversations of news of the day, like one topic. So if you're interested in coming on board, being a part of the team, then head to patreon.com/Big Hairy News. Get yourself involved. And yeah, we will be talking more about that. It was a bit, I'm not much of a hard salesman, this is a hard sell. So I didn't push it too hard last week. I mentioned it a couple of times, but actually, if we're going to do this, if we're going to be involved, if we're going to make this product for you guys and for others, then there needs to be a way that I need to stop paying for it out of my own back pocket, basically. Doesn't mean we're going to be wealthy, doesn't mean we're going to earn a full-time wage off it or anything, but that's one of the ways we're going to do it. So I'm just being blunt with you now. Friday night had an effect on me that made me change direction a little bit and think about what I'm going to do with this show. So if nothing else, what it has done is given me a laser focus as to where I sit in news conversations and where I want to sit. All right. So more on that as we go through the week. But the Patreon's available for you. Go and check it out. Get involved. No hard sells, but certainly no embarrassment anymore about me saying go for it. Super chats are always open. Super chats always get mentioned during the show, and we're gonna do this, right? We're gonna do this. We're gonna fucking do this. I'm telling you, we're gonna do this. I've been given a steely drive over the weekend, and yep, this has been a soft launch until now, but we're getting into this now. This is us, guys. Right. So in saying that, let's get into the news of the day. Biggest news story of the day in New Zealand, I think, today was probably the COVID situation. The first part of the conversation for today is going to be with Professor Michael Planck from the University of Canterbury. I'll be back with you shortly with a live conversation with Dr. Anna Brooks. From the School of Mathematics and Statistics at the University of Canterbury, Professor Michael Planck. Mike, thanks for joining us so much, man. Good to have you on board.
Kia ora, Pat. Nice to be here.
Yeah, well, look, big announcement because I was driving and listening to the Prime Minister at 4 o'clock live. So I was kind of doing this and this. But I think I heard her say that it's the first time in 3 years there's going to be sort of no restrictions at all, really. There are a few, like in healthcare settings, but really almost society can get back to life before the pandemic when it comes to things like masks, mandates, that sort of thing on the most. And I thought this will be really interesting to talk about. I've already seen on Twitter some people kind of going, ooh, and other people going, woohoo. So we first met you, we being me in this thing, talking about modeling. I want to talk to you about modeling for this shortly, but the first thing is just your reaction to the announcement today of not just going to green, but going bye-bye to the traffic light system.
Yeah, look. Overall, I think today's changes are a pretty sensible response to the situation that we're in now. Cases, hospitalizations, and deaths are at the lowest levels we've seen since February. And so the risk level we have in the community is much lower than we've seen in recent times at the moment. Now, it may not stay that way forever, and sooner or later we will get another wave of COVID. So we need to keep ready, and we need to be prepared to change things up if the situation warrants it. But on the other hand, I don't think we can sort of necessarily keep measures in place forever. Just because we might need them at some point in the future. So I think it's more about we really should be focusing now on a set of measures that can largely happen in the background, unnoticed by the general population on a day-to-day basis, and that includes things like ventilation, sick pay entitlements, so that people don't, they can afford to stay home if they're sick, as well as continued investment in vaccine development and delivery.
As I was listening to the absolute words, as in she was using absolute phrases of the Prime Minister. She said it's now safe. And I thought, safer? Would safer have been a better word? Because safe, like we talk about the messaging that's come out from the 9th floor, and sometimes I'm a bit concerned that now everyone will go, there's nothing to worry about. Because the Prime Minister has used the word, it's now safe. She also said, this will be the first summer in 3 years that nothing will get cancelled and that you can make your summer plans. That's not what you've just said, Michael. You've kind of said there could be some ups and downs, and there could be changes. The way the Prime Minister said it today was like, we are never going back. Do you agree that was her messaging, and how would you respond to that?
Yeah, I mean, what does safe mean? Nothing is ever 100% safe, including going out of your front door in the morning, right? So, these things aren't black and white. It is always shades of grey. Things are certainly a lot safer now than they have been earlier on in the year,
for sure,
from a COVID point of view. But yeah, we're still in a volatile and difficult to predict situation. We don't know when the next sort of major new variant will come along. Whether we'll get a sort of another Omicron, something that sort of completely comes out of left field and really causes a major wave in that way, or whether we'll settle down into a slightly more predictable pattern where the virus will continue to evolve, but maybe it does it more gradually rather than this sort of big leap that we saw with Omicron. I don't think we know that for certain yet. So, yeah, it's certainly hard to give certainties. That's definitely true.
When we met, as I said earlier, we met you, BHN met you in your capacity as a modeller. Has there been any modelling done for this moment? And, like the next 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, what does it tell us if there has been some done?
Yeah, look, we have been doing some modelling around the effect of changes in the transmission rate that might result from things like less mask use in the community. I should caveat it at the start by saying it's really difficult to know what the effect of a change in a specific policy is.
Yeah.
Because I think it's fair to say that mask use has already probably dropped off a bit since maybe earlier in the year when Omicron first came along. And of course, some people will continue to wear masks, and that's great. We should be grateful to anyone wearing a mask because they're doing a small action to reduce the risk for everyone by doing that. So how much of a change we'll see as a result of today's announcements is difficult to predict. What I would say we can see in the modelling is that if you have a change in the transmission as a result of a policy change, that can give you a short-term bump. So maybe we'll see an increase in cases following today's announcement. I'm not sure that will happen, but it's possible. However, the effect on the long-term number of infections is smaller. There's sort of a natural equilibrium in this system now, and changes in the short term can bump you around, and you might get a bump in cases. But in the long term, it's probably going to have a marginal effect going forward on the number of infections that we get. That's not to say it doesn't matter or that we shouldn't bother with it, because of course there are high-risk people and people who are protected by mask wearing that are vulnerable for whatever reason, and so wearing masks is still important to reduce risk for those people.
When it comes to modelling and kind of looking at the how it's flowing through society and the numbers behind it and stuff, I mean, I'm not superstitious, but it's kind of that thing. You don't want to say things out loud in case you affect the outcome, that sort of vibe. But it feels like we've had Omicron for quite a long time and we haven't seen any more variants. What needs to happen for us to kind of go, well, that's our bird flu done, that's our swine flu done, it's now actually all behind us, and it's not, we're either going to live with this forever, which seems to be the common parlance for the last year or so, but the numbers are dramatically dropping every day. And what would we need to actually see for a bit to be us going, remember 2 years ago when COVID was in the community and it's no longer around?
Yeah, I don't think there's a sort of a sudden day where everyone will agree that the pandemic is over. I think, pandemics start with a bang, but they end with a whimper.
Right.
I think, gradually, it will be a process where the pandemic gradually tapers away over a period of years. I mean, for example, the 1918 flu pandemic was still causing waves of flu for several years, and the impacts of that, went on for quite a long time. So yeah, I don't think there's sort of an agreed definition of when the pandemic ends. I think it will end over a gradual time period, as we see a reduction in the health burden, but also the response to it. There was a nice piece I read in The Guardian, I think it was not long ago, that talked of three types of ends to the pandemic. One being the health end, or the medical end to the pandemic. The other one being the social end to the pandemic, which is when do people sort of go back to their normal lives, most part. And the other one I think was the political end to the pandemic. So there's sort of there's these different aspects to it, and arguably we're perhaps close to the political and the social end of the pandemic, but maybe not quite at the medical end yet.
I'm trying to ask this of a few people through the day since the announcement, and I've said all the way through, I've probably said this to you, Michael, that especially since Omicron's come in, and especially since we moved to Orange, I'd like to try and get my information from people like you and from Anna Brooks and from Michael Baker, as opposed to necessarily from the 9th floor. I'm no conspiracy theorist, not saying the 9th floor is out to hurt anyone, but sometimes it seems that some people who are at the pointy end are saying something slightly different from the people, after it goes through what the consensus for the country is. So I was just thinking after the announcement, people like yourself who are in the thick of it, I'm someone who kind of goes to the supermarket most days. I buy little things, and I thought I was at the supermarket today and I wore my mask, and what would I do tomorrow when I don't have to? And I thought, I want to ask you guys that question. So if you were in a place today where you had to wear a mask, like a petrol station or a supermarket or a general place today, what will you be doing tomorrow, actually, you personally?
I should start off by saying I don't often go into shops. We generally get our groceries online or do the click and collect thing.
But somewhere, might attend.
Yeah. Will I change what I'm doing? I don't. Probably not. At least to start with, I think. I think I already sort of consider a little bit when should I wear a mask and when don't I, and that I probably won't change anything too drastically straight away. But I think over time, you do reevaluate that a little bit. And perhaps the situations where I wear a mask now are not quite the same as what they were in March of this year. So I think a gradual reevaluation of that sort of thing is okay. I mean, it does also depend whether you've had it. We know that the immunity you get from prior infection is not perfect, and it wanes over time. But if you've had COVID relatively recently, and you've cleared your rats are negative, then you're pretty low risk.
Yeah. For BA5. Yeah. No one knows about the next iteration. Should there be one?
Absolutely. Yeah. And of course, what waning immunity is a thing, and if it's if it's several months, 6 months since you've had it, then that risk does start to ramp back up again.
And I guess the flip side to having it is having a booster. I know that the boosters, that fourth booster, is still only for over 50s or healthcare workers. I may have missed it. You may know. Tell us if you have. But what I'll say is I've missed it at the point of us recording this conversation. Maybe by the time we broadcast, I won't have. But I don't know anything, because the other thing is to be updated with your boosters. So I'm under 50. I would do a fourth hit if they offered it to me now, but they're not. So that's the flip side of that. Has there been any conversation that you've heard out there about when that's going to be made more available to under 50s?
I think Minister Verrill said they're expecting an announcement on that this week. So I don't know what that announcement will be, but certainly watch this space, and completely agree. Look, making sure you're up to date with your boosters is the number one thing that anyone can do to protect their own health. But it does also have an effect on transmission as well. And the other thing to keep an eye on is the new updated vaccines that Pfizer and others have rolled out now, or are starting to roll out, that specifically target Omicron. Cool. These aren't available in New Zealand yet, but hopefully, at some point they will be. And these are potentially going to give people better protection to the current crop of variants as well.
I think they'll go all Oprah Winfrey on it, won't they? You get a vaccine, you get a vaccine, everybody gets a vaccine. Because that's surely, if they're opening it up, that's the flip side. They also have to offer the protections if they're going to open it up, or else those who either don't have that natural immunity from a recent case or who aren't up to date will then continue to, that's the other way to put it, in the rear vision mirror eventually, whenever that is, I would assume. Not being the layman here, Michael, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but that's how I see it.
Yeah, I mean, I think we'll continue to see vaccines prioritised towards those who are higher risk, which primarily for COVID means older people. It's not to say that younger people shouldn't get vaccinated, but it might start to look something a little bit more like flu, where there's an annual update, or some sort of on a regular cycle, you're offered an updated vaccine, much as we are with annual flu jab.
Very good. Last question. It's just really, one word answer. Are you kind of excited about this announcement today? Do you think choice cool, or are you more like a bit apprehensive, or you think it's the wrong decision?
I wouldn't say excited, but I think it's got the balance about right. Oh, that even caught me off guard. It was a quick finish there. Hello, back again.
Right, so you heard Professor Michael Planck talking about what he would do tomorrow. What I actually did was I sent some, you can go away, dog. I sent some images, some text around to some people today, as I talked about earlier. One of the people I sent a text to say, officially on the record, what will you be doing tomorrow, was Dr. Anna Brooks. And I can only say that I got a fiery response from Dr. Anna Brooks. So I think that I said to her, Anna, why don't you come on and talk about it? Hi there. How are you? Welcome.
Me? Fiery?
Well, I looked at it, and I won't say what you said because we want to talk about it, but a fairly firm response. So before I ask you that question, and I've actually got responses from Susie Wiles and David Welch as well, which we can have a look at, what they said they'd be doing tomorrow at the supermarket, so to speak. Tell us about the decision today. Where are you sitting on it? What are your thoughts?
Complete disregard for the vulnerable is where I'm sitting. We all sort of knew that this situation would come, that restrictions would drop. But it's one thing to expect restrictions to drop, but it's another thing entirely for there to be no systems in place to protect the vulnerable, like none. So there's been no advancement in making sure that our air spaces are well ventilated, Basically, vulnerable people have been dodging, public places to date, and now they're really locked up.
Mhm.
Now they have zero choice. They can't even go to a supermarket safely. So it's really distressing in the vulnerable communities. So I guess that the most frustrating part of all this is it's this big focus on death again. Yes, case numbers are coming down, and that's great, and so is the mortality. But there's complete disregard and no discussion about long COVID, about the impacts of getting infected. So the other things that I find very frustrating about today is, you were just discussing booster shots. What about those of us under 50 who would like to be protected right now because our immunity is waning? Should that not have been something that was widely accessible before, we throw away our masks and be completely vulnerable? This virus finds the vectors it needs, and there's no denying that. So when we hear about the wall of immunity and on and all these catchphrases about why the cases are coming down, yes, that's happening, but we've still got cases. The cases are infecting people who have not been infected. That is what's happening. And and the great thing is yes, the boosters do add that layer of protection. You hear about it anecdotally. The pockets that are happening right now are people who have not been infected before, and it's getting them. And the people who aren't getting the infections, they may have already had it and they might be boosted. There is a layer of protection there. So if you take away all of these protections, I mean, getting on a plane with everyone surrounded you without a mask on a bus, all of these things now, your layer of protection has vanished. So I think it's tough. I think, it was a complete disregard. And hearing words like, now that we're going to have clarity for the vulnerable, that they've been forgotten.
I also wondered, and I don't know if you know the answer to this exactly, but when the Prime Minister says, in consultation with health officials, we've made this decision, who are they speaking to?
Good question. No one in the vulnerable communities got a look in. There's as I say, there's been no discussions about those impacted by long COVID. And what we're seeing come out through the research is that people with long COVID are more likely to get reinfected. As in we're sort of seeing that happening. I mean, okay, it's a little bit anecdotal at this point, but that the studies coming out and the children especially were sort of showing that you may have got gone through a recovery phase with your long COVID, and then a reinfection happens and boom, everything comes screaming back again. It's just one of those things that's just not getting spoken about, the vulnerabilities of repeat infections.
How could they being the government made this decision? How could this have happened without that concern? I guess what I'm saying is, I'm not saying this like it makes it okay, but isn't there a reality that the vulnerable are always going to be vulnerable? And if there's a chance of catching it, it's always going to be a situation. Like how would, if you were advising the PM, what would you have said about what would you need to see to go to this, let's get rid of the traffic lights?
Well, yeah, it is like a lot of the experts are saying, we need a new normal. We don't need to go back to 2019. We need to normalize safe airspace. We need, every event we host or hold where we're in confined spaces, if it's ventilated, it's going to be safer. All of those layers of protection we haven't seen change. So you're right, as in vulnerable people will continue to be vulnerable, but I think there has been no noises or sort of strong messaging to actually make change within our businesses or our workplaces or whatever. So, so we're facing, as soon as the announcement came, I'm a university lecturer, the ripples started coming through. What do we feel about going back to lecturing with no masks? And we've just come out of mid-semester break, and the week before, 2 COVID cases in my class, and and I felt safe because we were all masking.
Yeah, right.
what happens next? We all get infected if we're vulnerable. And that's the thing, the different demographics that are in classrooms, or, if you haven't had it, and this is the thing, if you have not had COVID, it's going to, it finds the vulnerable person or the person it can infect, doesn't it? That's just how these waves happen. So those are the things that are alarming to us, is that everyone has the right to education. Everyone has the right to a safe workplace. What have we done to protect those rights? And the answer seems very little, like that nothing's changed.
Yeah, I've learned quite a bit about like carbon dioxide parts per million in the last few weeks. There's this community group in Dunedin who did some work in my house, and one of the things they've asked is, from doing the work in the house, can they install this? It's basically a sensor for them to get data on the houses they're doing work in. And I'm like, yeah, of course you can, and I've got a link for it. And so I can go and have a look at it, and I can have a look at things like the moisture in the house. And one of the things is parts per million of carbon dioxide. And I mean, again, you're the expert here, but my understanding is outside is about 300 to 400 parts per million of CO2 in the outside air. And if you're inside and it gets above 800, that's time to open up the doors and kind of air the place out. Watching the graph of my house, around 9:30, 10:30 at night, when everyone's going to bed, it spikes up over 800. During the day, when I'm home by myself working, it's down around 300. So when I've got that visual representation now, I understand it a bit more about if the 800 parts per million, is the kind of danger time for the virus to be spread around, how easy it is to get there. I've heard other stories of people at workplaces who will carry around their own little kind of portable CO2 monitors, and they put them on the middle of the desks while they're talking. And if it goes up to like 600-700, that's when they open up the windows. They let it go down, and they close the windows, and they keep talking. Is that a realistic kind of expectation? Is that where we actually need to go in society? As in a way, not because I was also thinking, cough, colds, and flus, that would help just with that as well. But is that sort of what we need to move towards?
Of course. We need to normalize that it's a great thing to breathe in safe air. And that's what we've been sort of trying to push the message on, since we sort of said that vaccines aren't enough. Because, of course, we also weren't sort of saying that, we should mask forevermore either. No one wants that, but a mask should be your added layer of protection if you're not safe in the airspace that you're in. So if we start with the air around us and start monitoring that and making that safe, then yes, of course, requirements for masking is going to plummet. And as you say, if your air is clean, it's good for education. It's good, for your brain to have clean air. It's good for schools, all of those things. So that's what we were sort of hoping, that, that society would sort of change and there'd be pressures for our airspace, just like we don't drink dirty water. So those are the things that a lot of the experts are actually calling for, was better ventilation, so that, we would stop getting respiratory viruses in general. And
it's such a hard thing to put in place, though, because it's retrospective, isn't it? It's like trying to build infrastructure within a city that already exists. Like, how do you fix Auckland's transport problems? You already have the restrictions. How do you do the ventilation, in the middle of winter here in Dunedin, when it's literally last week snowing outside? It sort of feels like it needs to be some kind of system within the building, but then that's an installation of something that's a cost. It sounds like if you are building a new house, it seems like this is one of the new things that you should put on your tick list. How do you work with ventilation? But if you're living in a 1960 house, we do have an HRV system, but that's only an aspect of it. Actual proper ventilation for this situation is something to try and think, how's it a practical application, I guess I'm saying.
Yeah, absolutely. But this isn't a one-time event.
Yeah.
Today it sounded like, woo, COVID's over, and the virus wasn't consulted. The virus, the virus didn't decide that today's the day it's going to just shuffle off.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like we've just, as a nation, have decided it's time to, let it rip round who hasn't had it yet. And so the thing is we know that more variants are likely, more waves are likely, all of those things are likely. And so the more that we prepare, now's the time to prepare. Preparing for something, you do it yesterday. So, preparing for the future, that this is respiratory viruses are here to stay, and the more that we can prevent them and prevent illness, the better. And despite, the more that we ignore this pandemic, again, the virus doesn't care, and it's going to get people on their second or third infection, and that's going to put them in bed, and that's going to give them their long COVID or their heart problem or their neurological condition. Like, just ignoring that this virus causes long-term impacts doesn't make it go away. It just makes those long-term impacts even harder to educate on, because nobody thinks that they exist and nobody wants to listen.
My health hobs has just kind of also put out sort of what you're talking about, the vulnerable. My health hob says I live with 2 immunocompromised people. For me, lockdown starts now, gutted.
Yeah,
I guess that's kind of speaking to what you're talking about.
Exactly. And this is what we've been advocating for such a long time now. Nobody lives in an environment, in a site, in their own little bubble. We've got children at schools.
Yeah.
There'll be families impacted everywhere where they don't feel that it's safe for their children to go to school now, because it might not be the child. It could be the parent, the grandparent, whoever's living in that household that's vulnerable. So we've now just been anyone who is vulnerable, and whether that's vulnerable clinically or immunocompromised, immunosuppressed, or not vaccinated. We can't forget that under 5s aren't vaccinated. Some of our youth aren't boosted, and as we just spoke about, under 50s still don't have access to the 4th boost. I would have liked to have seen all of those things, like as in tick as many boxes or as protected as you can be before all of these protections stopped. I would have liked a 4th boost. And I think you were talking about this before. If you look up online, we're not eligible. But there's a few rumors going around that, I'm pretty certain I was offered it a few weeks ago. And I was like, well, I'm not eligible yet.
Well, like out the back of a station wagon or something. Hey,
Yeah,
got a vaccine? Want a vaccine?
It was actually in a pharmacy.
Okay.
So there was a slight. I'm pretty certain the pharmacist said, "Oh, I can give it to you now if you want." And I was like, "Oh, I'm not eligible." So those sorts of.
Did you take? Were you insulted? Were they saying you look over 50? Is that what I was saying?
Yeah, exactly. What are you saying? I was like, what? Yeah, so I was not eligible, and so that was that. But because there's loads of people that are vulnerable that would absolutely take up a 4th boost if it gave them that layer of protection. And so, and is there mixed messages out there? Is it accessible if you went and asked for it? I don't really know. I'm just pretty certain that I was offered it because I look 50, clearly.
Hey, Anna, this question is the question I sent you, and I'm asking several people today, and shortly I'll show you Dr. David Welsh's and Susie Wiles's answer where they texted back to me. But so today, right, you're at the supermarket today, under the current regulations, must wear a mask, etc. You're going to the supermarket tomorrow, Anna. Are you changing any of your habits? Are you changing any of your practice?
No, masking all the way. And the one thing that I just will find completely frightening is public transport, like getting on an aeroplane. I just saw a messaging just before about, the fact that, planes are saying, our airlines are saying, yay, no more masking. It's like, is that the next one going to be, yay, no more staff. They're all sick with COVID.
No more flights.
No more flights. Oh, we're going to cancel all your holidays because there's no staff. So that's the thing. That's what masking does. It keeps people in business. And so, of course, yes, the cases are coming down, but that's just because, we had safety precautions. If a whole plane is now all bets are off, there might be a staff member on every plane that is exposed daily. So no, masking needs to be there. We in these circumstances that don't feel safe.
Yeah, no, coming to Auckland in the first week of October, I will be wearing my mask in the plane, no question. I've sort of thought about it today. I thought, I think maybe not everyone, Anna, you're probably perfect, but many of us have have increased our risk somewhat in some places, sensible risks. But I still think that if I was to go into a place that was closed off, lots of people, close quarters, at today or tomorrow, I should say, I probably will still wear a mask. I think that would be my practice. So, and then a plane is one of those places.
A plane is definitely one of those places, and I think the places that is going to be hardest to be a part of with low masking events, like whether that's work events, where you're all in a confined space, or entertainment. I mean, okay, people have been going to bars for a while now, but we've had conferences and where masking is required. Are we going to start seeing hosts of events not put masking? Should please mask if you can, because now it's not a requirement, it's not going to get asked, is it? So I think we're going to see all of those things dissolve away, which is going to lead to more and more infections rippling around. It might not shoot up our case numbers, but it's going to ripple around, because that's the places that the virus spreads.
Okay, so this is the response from Dr. David Welch. You might be interested to see this as well, Anna. So same question to him, are you going to change your behaviors tomorrow? His response was, I've been easing off in my mask use the last couple of weeks with low numbers, but still wearing it in class and in meetings at work. So no immediate change. We'll probably keep it on in shops too, especially if they're busy. That's sort of what I'm saying in those confined spaces. Dr. David Welsh says that. Susie Wiles as well. I asked her, and she says, I'm definitely not changing my behavior, and I'm going to be watching the COVID wastewater data to see how the prevalence is changing. Apologies for those. I was putting this together at 2 minutes to 10. I should have spread those out better. But so keeping an eye on the wastewater. So I guess kind of doing your own numbers to see if looks like cases are going up officially via wastewater, which is probably the best way to look at things now, isn't it? Because people who aren't reporting. So that means out of the 5 people I approached, and I did ask Michael Baker as well, but obviously busy man, didn't hear back from him. So this is the list of people I've been talking to. You, Michael Plank, sorry, Susie Wiles, David Welsh, all basically saying not going to change mask usage tomorrow from today, which I think is telling, because as we've said all the way through this, we want to speak to the people at the pointy end, not being conspiracy theorists about the ninth floor of the beehive, but the people in the labs, I think, have better advice perhaps than the people on the ninth floor are giving out, especially when they say things like it's now safe to go out and do this rather than safer. Might be safer than it was 6 weeks ago, but it's not necessarily. That absolute word certainly changes the vibe of what that feels like.
And using the word certainty, I think, was a giant stretch. Like, that summer is going to bring us certainty.
Yeah.
Because
no
COVID
events being cancelled.
Yeah, because COVID knows to not encroach on our summer now.
Yeah.
So we've looked into the crystal ball, and there's going to be certainty. Yeah. And and we're going to get over our so-called COVID anxiety over summer. I mean, all of those things were just really deflating things to hear for the vulnerable communities who have been battling away in their own self-isolation, trying their best to avoid infection, and now all bets are off, in a lot of these environments. I mean, in retaining masks in healthcare settings, yay. I mean, is that not just logic? So,
I was interested. I read, and I know you and I, Anna, have been talking about the orange situation with masks in schools, but I was really interested to read last week. I got a bit annoyed, actually, because there was principals talking about now that they've brought masks back into schools, all of a sudden, a whole bunch of the kids weren't getting sick. And I was just like, oh, like now that we've decided to bring them back in the last 2 months, it's like all of a sudden we've got a roll of 83 to 95% again, not down at 46%, like we keep getting told by Christopher Luxon.
I know. It's magic, isn't it?
It is magic.
Yeah, it's totally magic that masks help this. And okay, we do have summer on our side and the warmer weather coming, but we also know that that doesn't actually prevent the waves. All the other countries that have been through summers have had waves. We're just following suit, that we're going to pretend that, that people, that death's not happening, and that people aren't getting long COVID. All of those things are going to go on behind the scenes with no real reflection on, that the things aren't changing.
Cool. Dr. Anna Brooks. Anna, thanks for joining us again. It was nice to get you in for a bit. I felt like your text was more fiery than our conversation. I was waiting for the flame to come out, but that was good. As you're being professional and more reserved, perhaps. But if you want to yell at me on the text anytime, you're more than welcome to.
Sure. Cool.
Thanks, Anna.
Awesome.
All the best, mate. All right, so there you go. So there's the COVID update. Seems that we are. Can I say this? The experts say, all the experts are saying, we are not changing our behavior, meaning they are not changing their behavior. I guess now that's up to you. As I said, I think what I will probably be doing, and I'm saying probably because I don't want to be a hypocrite. Oi, what you doing? Psst, psst. Are you alive? Nala. No, she's dead. What I will be doing is, I have increased my risk. I was in a building a couple of weekends ago, and it was like the size of a rugby field, half a rugby field, and there was probably 50 to 100 people sitting in it, and we were sort of 3 meters from anyone. Didn't wear my mask. If I was sitting in a bar watching the UFC in Christchurch on a Sunday afternoon, you know who I'm talking to, I probably would wear it shoulder to shoulder with people. So I think what I'll start doing is looking at the situation in front of me and making a decision based on that. Okay, so we're going to move on to something different now. And I am saying this. No, I am going to do this now because I'm thinking about my time frame, and it might end up being that we talk the monarchy tomorrow with Dr. Sean Palmer, which is fine. We might still do it tonight. It depends how long this takes me to get through. But I wanted to have a look at a story out of the US. You all know how much I love US politics, and there was a story over the weekend that some of you may have seen because it was just a master class in how to deal with disinformation, misinformation, and talking points. So there's a story about Vice President Harris calling the Supreme Court an activist court. I want to show you the setup to this, so the first 60 seconds so you know what the story is. But the actual masterclass to show you about what to do with mis and disinformation comes with Al Franken speaking to Alice Stewart, who was a GOP strategist. Now, Al Franken, I actually don't know whether he was ever a stand-up comedian, but he was certainly a comedy writer and performer on Saturday Night Live. And then, of course, he got voted into politics. And then he had to leave politics because there was a photo of him doing the rounds that he was pretending to grab a woman's breast. So he resigned and left. And now he's sort of starting to come back out and comment on things. So this is amazing. So let me give you the setup first of all, the first 60 seconds so you know what the story is, and then we'll go into this man dropping the hammer.
I think this is an activist court. This court took that constitutional right away. And we are suffering as a nation because of it. That causes me great concern about the integrity of the court overall.
So she's specifically talking about Roe versus Wade.
A few hours after NBC shared that clip, Chief Justice John Roberts indirectly responded. Here was his comments last night in his first public remarks about the Dobbs decision.
The last year was an unusual one and difficult in many respects. It was gut-wrenching every morning to drive into a Supreme Court with barricades around it. Lately, the criticism is phrased in terms of, because of these opinions, it calls into question the legitimacy of the court. Simply because people disagree with an opinion is not a basis for questioning the legitimacy of the court.
Let's discuss.
So there you go. So this is now the panel conversation. On one side is former politician, comedy writer, podcaster, broadcaster Al Franken. On the other side is GOP strategist Alice Stewart. So Al Franken gets the first chance to set the scene for what's going on. So the question that they're debating is, should the vice president be talking about this court being an activist court? And Al Franken gets 40 seconds to explain his perspective.
Your thoughts?
I disagree with what the Chief Justice said. The legitimacy of the court was undermined when they wouldn't take up Merrick Garland. And you'll remember that McConnell said it was because it was during an election year. And you remember Lindsey Graham pledging that if a vacancy came open during an election year in 20, that he wouldn't vote for. They wouldn't take up a nominee. They've stolen 2 seats. The one that Merrick Garland wasn't given a hearing for, and the one that Coney Barrett was, where she was seated a week before the election. That destroyed the legitimacy of the court.
So succinct, sets out his case, says this is the situation. And then his counterpart, who is Alice Stewart, she is a strategist for the GOP. The interviewer starts to give her a chance to share her thoughts, and yeah, it doesn't go so well for her.
Just to throw a little accuracy in some of what Al said there. Look, the Merrick Garland was held up because we had a divided government. We had a Democrat in the White House, and we had Republicans in control of.
That's not what was said. That's not what McConnell said.
But that's the way historically this has been. When you're in close to an election year and you have divided government.
That's not the way it's been historically done.
Yes, and when you have divided government, there typically is an inclination to.
Tell me when this happened before.
When you
tell me when it happened before.
When you're Merrick Garland is certainly one. When there's a divided government,
no, before Merrick Garland,
they're not moving forward.
Tell me when this happened before.
Al, I'm telling you, this is what the Mitch.
Tell me when it happened before.
I can't.
You said this is what happened historically. Tell me when it happened before.
Look, this is the way that the Republicans went. Like, I can't give you an exact example of when this happened in the past.
You know why you can't? Because it hadn't happened before.
Look, the basis for not appointing him was because of that specific reason. But moving forward,
it wasn't. And McConnell explicitly said that it was the, quote, Biden rule. And he quoted a little piece of a speech that Biden had given in June of 80. And Biden said they wouldn't take up if they weren't consulted. And this was about someone resigning in June after a term of the court, which is very different than someone dying. Scalia died in February. And you saw, you guys, if you can find the tape, you can find
we can find
Lindsey
the tape.
Graham
we
saying,
have found the tape.
You keep the tape. We will not take up a judge if someone dies, a nominee, if someone dies in an election year in the next election. This is total hypocrisy. And you actually, I'm surprised that you're claiming this and you can't come up with an example because there is none.
Right.
To get back to the
I paused. So I do have the clip he's talking about. Now I apologize because this has been put together by act.tv. I don't know who they are, but it's got kind of silly music and stuff behind it. But this is the situation where the Republicans in America, and you all probably know this, said that you can't have that Obama couldn't have a Supreme Court nominee, and that if it happened with Trump, they wouldn't do it. And then they did it with Trump. Now, something to remember as well, if you're not clear of this, not to go too far away from this. This is when Obama tried to get in Merrick Garland, that was from February to November. So that's what, 9 months? There was 9 months to get someone in, and the Republicans said you can't do it in the last year. Donald Trump got someone in within 2 months of an election. So there's nothing but hypocrisy here. But just for those of you who haven't seen it, or to remind you, this is Lindsey Graham talking about not putting someone in the last year of an election cycle.
Words against me. If there's a Republican president in 2016 and a vacancy occurs in the last year of the first term, you can say, Lindsey Graham said, let's let the next president, whoever it might be, make that nomination. And you could use my words against me, and you'd be absolutely right. If an opening comes in the last year of President Trump's term and the primary process is started, we'll wait till the next election. And I've got a pretty good chance being the judiciary.
You're on the record.
Yeah.
All right.
Hold the tape.
I'm going to mute it now because now it's the silly music, and there's a tweet that Lindsey Graham put out 2 months before that election. In the light of these two events, I will support President real Donald Trump in any effort to move forward regarding the recent vacancy created by the passing of Justice Ginsburg. So, just to point out, if you can find it, we can find it. And so remember, when we're looking at this clip, this is actually Alice Stewart's time that Al Franken has jumped into. But after that conversation they've just had, she then pivots and tries to get back to talking about Roe versus Wade. And again, it doesn't go quite so well for her.
To get back to the point of the conversation here.
No,
Kamala Harris,
this is the point.
We're talking about Kamala Harris and her calling the current Supreme Court justices activist justices because she doesn't like the outcome of their ruling. And when they made their decision on Roe v. Wade, they looked at the precedent and they looked at Roe v. Wade and said it was egregiously wrong from the start. And they looked at the constitutional aspect of this and saw that there was no constitutionally protected right for an abortion listed in the Constitution. That's why they took it out. And the most important thing here is that this took an important issue like abortion out of the hands of 9 unelected justices and put it back in the hands of elected officials at the state level, which is exactly where it should be. And the only reason that Kamala Harris says they're activists is because she doesn't like the outcome of their ruling.
Alan.
So there's a really interesting point she just made, and I don't know, I can't remember whether Al Franken picks up on it, but she says the decision for abortion should be at the level of the states, should be in the hands of the states. And obviously, the decision for abortion should be at the hands of the people involved with the abortion. It's always so funny when the Republicans talk about keeping government out of my decision making, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Yet then they are happy to have the government involved when it suits them. The government can stop abortions. So CNN goes on saying states that have referendums on abortion and on a choice camp, even in the GOP states, are winning. So the next point that's made is when this does go to the people, they all vote because they want to have it in, even in GOP states.
You remember when Kavanaugh said this wasn't just precedent, Roe v. Wade, but Casey was precedent upon precedent? This is why these guys are considered not legitimate, because they lied in their confirmation hearings. Yeah, they caught the car. You saw in Kansas, it was what, 59 or 40? No, 59, 41.
And to speak to that, so people would know, he's talking about Kansas, and the reason that they're making that as a point is Kansas at the last election massively went to Donald Trump. So remember, in America, not to educate you, you know this, but it sometimes gets confusing, that red is, it's the other way around. Red is to the right, blue is to the left. So there's Kansas there, completely right wing, completely to the right. 56.18% voted for Trump and only 41% voted for Biden. So even if in places where Trump is their boy, when it comes to the abortion conversation, when it comes to should we have legal and accessible abortions, they say, yeah, of course we should, which is why the Republicans at the moment are really struggling to continue to hold grips within the path up to the midterms. It looks like they're going to lose the Senate. And I saw something today that said if they being the Democrats, if the Democrats actually continue on the path they're continuing on right now, in other words, they get the same percentage increase in the polling for Congress that they've been getting over the past several weeks, then come election day, it could be a 50-50 call. Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen. I have no idea, because at the moment it's 70-30, but the number of it has gone up by so much, and the slope is going up so much that if it continues on that slope up, and it's because of Roe versus Wade, if it continues on that upslope, then come election day, midterms, it'll be a toss-up for Congress as well, which would be even a toss-up would be unheard of. Last part for this, and this is of course Al Franken. I mean, he's dropped the mic, he's dropped the hammer, he's wiped things off his shoe, he's done all of that, but he wraps it up pretty well as well.
In Kansas, it's a pretty conservative state, and you saw what happened in Michigan is a perfect example of how the Republican Party has ceased to participate in good faith in our democracy. This was their canvassing board that is a 2-2 board, 2 Republicans, 2 Democrats. They had 750,000 signatures from people saying, we want this on the ballot. We want to be able to vote on this. These two commissioners said, oh no, they found some absurd little like spacing in the, and so they rejected this. Well, the Supreme Court then decided 5-2, and it's a heavily Republican Supreme Court, that what they were doing was absurd, what they were doing. So now the people in Michigan are going to decide. And look, this is something that a woman should decide, that a woman with her doctor should decide. This isn't something that should be decided by other people.
What do you think, Alice?
I think this should be decided not by the Supreme Court, but it should be decided at the state level. And look, how
about guns?
Are you worried about the political?
This was a really unfortunate thing they missed, right? Really unfortunate. So in case you missed it as well, to say, she is making an argument that the states should decide when it comes to abortion. He says, how about guns? Meaning, if the states decided on guns, places like California, places like New York, they would have different gun laws in. But the Republicans, because it doesn't suit their narrative, would say, no, Second Amendment, it's a right, it's in the Constitution, shouldn't be decided on a state level. But they're saying abortion, because they want it that way, should be. And it's really sad that this point wasn't picked up on. He said it. It's a fantastic fucking question. And then they moved on.
What consequences of this?
We've already seen
Republicans may pay a price.
We have seen consequences for this. Kansas is a perfect example. Al, you're right. When abortion is on the ballot, up or down, there's a lot of support across the board for abortion protection. So when it gets down to it, and these are ballot initiatives, and we're going to see more and more of them, more people do side for abortion protections. The most important thing, though, is pro-life advocates like myself. I think there needs to be exceptions for rape, incest, and life of the mother. And any state that does not have those exceptions is doing a tremendous disservice to the pro-life issue. So we need to make sure and keep those exceptions in place. But look, I support life.
How about doing a disservice to the women?
Look, again, I think a service to the sanctity of life is what I stand for. And I think we need to protect life.
That's your religious belief. If you don't want to have
hammer drop,
if you don't want to have an abortion, don't have one.
Hammer drop.
The point is, there are going to be at the state level a lot of times where the people that are supportive of the pro-life issue and supportive of overturning Roe v. Wade, it's not going to be a great outcome for us. But the most important thing is that the pro-life movement.
At least she knows that it's not going to be a great outcome for us, meaning the Republicans. At least she knows.
And social evangelicals fought to overturn Roe v. Wade to put this back in the hands of the people. And that's exactly what's happening.
It's not a great outcome for a 10-year-old who's raped and has to go to another state. And these justices, I asked you right at the beginning of this to come up with an example. You still haven't. This is an illegitimate court.
There you go. So I wanted to share that with you because it is just an amazing piece of footage. Al Franken is outstanding. It's the absolute dictionary definition of how to handle dis and misinformation. Not that that's got anything to do with conversations we were having last week, but you bring things into the light. You bring things into the light. My mum used to say sunlight is the best disinfectant. I believe it. And you bring things into the light. Right. We're going to do the Monarchy tomorrow. I told Sean Palmer, it's a pre-record, that we might actually end up doing it tomorrow because I knew tonight might go a bit long. I want to say to you again, there are some changes coming to what we're doing here. Some of the changes are going to be around Patreon. And if you want to get on board, should I put my little banner across? The little banner that helps us explain it. There it goes. Come and join the team and help us keep making independent news. And I did notice that someone jumped in tonight and signed up. I think it was John T. Let me just check in my emails. I want to open up the email there because everyone will see my emails. Let me check. Yeah, John T. John T signed up today. new patron. Thank you. We are going to be starting to use Patreon to host some content. I think someone asked a question about that. Let me go back and have a look. Here. Adam says, will the videos be for all levels? Very good question. I think they will start at Patreon. I haven't made that final decision yet, Adam. I think they will start at Patreon. I don't think they will be for Coffee Runner. Right? But I haven't decided yet. What I may do is make them available to everyone, but say within the Coffee Runner status, by this date, access to long form videos will be gone. So, you know, to let people know. Now, if you've just joined us and you missed the start of the show, then this is really based around a conversation that started last week, which is still ongoing. I think what I'm probably going to do at the end of this week is potentially a whole show where we talk about the process to get to some new decisions within the show. From my side of things, not much will change from how it looks or what we say or the direction we're taking in or the positions we have or who we support or who we love. But my focus has been narrowed. And I mean, when I say narrowed, what I'm saying is I have more of a laser light focus as to what my job is, who I am a little bit, not to sound all bloomin', you know, I've had a discovery about myself, not like that, who I am and where my place is in these bigger conversations. You cannot please all the people all the time. And whilst it is always good to have wise counsel around you advising on what you're doing, when you have wise counsel around you saying all sorts of different things, you get to a point of basically saying, if everyone's saying something different or if many people are saying different things, then it's just a decision or a choice to be made. From maybe not this week, but from where we're going to move is we're going to put any of those big, long 1.5 to 2.5 hour conversations that we have had on this show a couple of times, they are going to go on Patreon. We will use probably clips from it or abridged version or truncate versions on the show. So imagine I've just spoken to a American contributor. It's been 2 hours. Yeah, maybe I'll play 30 minutes on the show, bring out a chunk, and then the rest of it will be on Patreon. That's what we're going to do. Now, this is what we're doing here. So, you know, is fairly unique in New Zealand. No one's really doing quite what we're doing, but what we're doing is actually a model that's used extensively around the world, especially in America. We will provide lots of free content. We will provide lots of interesting conversations. We will provide all those sorts of things. And then there will be some content for people who want it that there may have to be a fee to get to. Now, obviously, we are very, 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 very small. We are not going to get rich doing this. But we also do need to pay the bills. Like, I'm not even talking about paying us, but just the bills, you know, the lights, the internet, you know, if one of the computer screens goes down, that stuff. So just literally enough to keep this thing going for you guys. So Patreon is one of the ways we're going to be doing that. So if you like what we do, if you would like to get on board and support us, the two ways you can do, there's sort of three ways you can do it. One is to be basically an ambassador, tell people about us and share our stuff around. That conversation with Michael Plank is already on YouTube. Share it around, show people. Actually, the conversation with Dr. From Monarchy New Zealand, Dr. Sean Palmer, that's already on YouTube as well. Now, we'll play that tomorrow night, but if you want to get into it early, you can go and have a look at it. No problems whatsoever. So you can be an ambassador and you can share stuff around and tell people about us. The other way is you can become a patron and sign up to Patreon. That will financially help us. And the last way, I guess, is when we're doing this kind of conversation, when we're having chats with people, when we're broadcasting live, you can super chat and that will help us as well. And then we will continue to do this for you. So that's really what it's about. I guess part of my my focus over the weekend is there's no more bullshitting. There's no more fucking around and going just, you know, sweet as, we'll just see what happens. It's like at some point, this has to stop coming out of my back pocket. This is not a hobby that I'm doing. And if it ends up being a hobby, then that again changes my focus. But I'm trying to make this so that we can do this. Ideally, we'd have 2 or 3 people doing this full time. That's what we'd ideally like. And we will see how we can get there. And one of the ways we start today is with patrons. There you go. There's my hard sell. And really, it's up to you guys. I can't twist your arm any much more than that, but we'll leave it to it. Speaking of that, John T, who signed up today, said, good call, mate. So it's about this. And it was actually Politikiwi. Took the Patreon advice and followed it, and Simple said, you called it. So thank you guys for being with us today. We will do the monarchy conversation tomorrow. And other than that, I appreciate you being with us. Thanks for jumping on board. Thanks for being here. And I would show you now. People are asking for more Nala, but my camera has just, I think, run out of battery. So if I try and add that, I get this. So, and she's asleep. So I'm not going to disturb her. So that's it. We'll see you tomorrow night from 10 o'clock. George will be with us tomorrow night. And good to be with you. Good to be spending some more time with y'all until 10 o'clock tomorrow night. Be safe. Be interested to know tomorrow, if you're out and about, what you're seeing in the public. Are people still wearing masks or not? And what you're going to decide to do. Take it easy. We will talk to you real soon. All right. See you. Bye.